And welcome back to the ABCs of ERP and Beyond, the podcast all about enterprise resource planning systems and how they shape the way businesses operate, grow, and succeed in the modern world. And today we are talking about more and more about what companies are facing as they try and scale. We know that the way of the world is going with being online. So connecting your e-commerce site to your ERP is what we're going to be talking about today. It's not just about pushing web orders into a system. It's about being right. It means about synchronization of inventory, accurate product data, cleaner logistics, and really the ability to grow and expand your business onto the digital space. And I cannot do this without my fellow co-host, Nirav Shah. Welcome back.
Reporting for duty, sir. Happy to be here again and talking about ERP and all the different ways it touches business. And this topic in specific, talking about e-commerce and how e-commerce companies could prepare themselves or should prepare themselves, right, to integrate to an ERP. There comes a point in time, I think, in every e-commerce business's life that they realize that they're outgrowing all the bandages that they put in place to manage their website, manage their accounting, manage their inventory, manage the customer service, all that stuff. Like at a certain point, the business just can't sustain any longer with put together piecemeal of solutions that don't talk to each other at the end of the day. This episode in particular, which I'm seeing, and more and more when we're looking at prospects and prospects are coming to talk to us, is that these e-commerce companies are realizing before it gets too late, that they need to integrate to an ERP system. But that comes with, right, not just, hey, we need an ERP system, let's go, let's just integrate and everything's going to be good and well. These companies don't really fully grasp or understand the groundwork that needs to be done before even selecting an ERP system, right? And then what happens after you select an ERP system, right? I think today, we'll talk about the precursor of selecting maybe an ERP system for the most part. Today is going to be the top 5 tips to prepare a e-commerce site to integrate into an ERP system.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot, believe it or not, Peter, there's a lot of planning that goes to this. And we always encourage our prospects to take the time properly and analyze, evaluate. There's the component, you ask yourself questions of what you've done and why you've done it and what you want to do moving forward.
Yeah, I think this is really interesting one because when we talk about moving on to an ERP, if it's your first ERP, if you're coming from accounting software, Excel spreadsheets, pieces of paper in the warehouse, shop floor whiteboards, it's quite a difference in the physical world moving on to an ERP, moving on to that single source of truth, as we say. For an e-commerce platform, there's not so much that physical change that you notice because you might be in a position where your single source of truth for most of the business is the back end of the e-commerce site, is the Shopify admin area. And then for the finance team, it's their accounting software, whether it's kind of a simple Sage or QuickBooks or something. That's it. It's not really a load of disparate systems. So when we talk about an e-commerce site that you have where you're kind of managing inventory, you're managing the data, you're managing orders in that back-end system, then we say, okay, guys, let's integrate that into an ERP system. That's slightly different from, say, a manufacturing business or just a straight distribution business. So point number 1 that we want to talk about here is the why behind it. So point number 1 or tip number 1, clear goals of the ERP implementation. So why would we even consider ERP?
Yeah. And, I think the very first one is that everyone is running in their own island, right? They're looking at their own set of data without being able to see across the business what's happening, right? That goes from orders to demand planning to creating purchase orders to what's in your warehouse to, how is that impacting in shipping and invoicing and what's happening with the financials. So, there's almost like everyone's like an individual project manager almost in a sense. And they're just juggling and managing data from all these different sides without actually creating better efficiencies in the warehouse floor instead of, trying to be better upfront on customer service issues or look at better rates for shipping, being able to find vendors or get vendors that will, give you better price margin and price breaks, right, for things you have to buy. So instead of doing all these other things that are that's going to add value to the business, instead you are just managing Excel files. You're managing manual reports coming out of your ERP, right? So one of the goals is what do you want to sync, right? Do you want to sync orders, right? So somebody else on the other side could see orders correctly on the warehouse floor. Inventory, is inventory hard for your front end to see at the end of the day, right? Is that invisible that you want to actually make that more viewable to not only your customer maybe, but someone in the front office? Better logistics. And this is a big one. This last point that I have here is expansion into the omni-channel. All right, is one of the goals for you to not only stay on Shopify, for example, but you also then want to move into micro marketplaces like maybe eBay, because you're an automotive distributor, right? eBay is huge for automotive distribution. Maybe you want to do Pinterest because you do Etsy, because you do, something more niche, type product for a certain group or demographic or something like that, right? Amazon, you want to expand and reach the whole broader audience, right? Around the world, you want to go on Amazon. So once you decide that you want to expand, it's just not expanding just on that side, but how are you going to take in those orders? How are you going to go ahead and maintain that moving forward? How are you going to understand where most of your revenue is coming from, right? How's your back end team going to know? How are you going to make sure, does it matter for them to know where that order is coming from? You just have to have a little bit better efficiency and stream in fulfilling, higher volume of orders now, instead of fulfilling an order by order
Mhm.
basis.
That also applies to if you are using 3PL. I think also the ability to see these orders, where they're coming from, how they're flowing through your business, especially when we talk about, the logistics side of it, as you were saying, it's
Sure.
crucial, right? Especially when you can't physically go and check the stock all the time. The ability to better track that within the ERP as well, that's huge.
Yeah. Yeah. From the customer base that we've taken live using, Shopify and having disparate systems, the common kind of denominator that I've always seen is that people have just got so frustrated that, you know, they're looking at Shopify at their orders, then they're maybe looking at Finale, manually to see if
Yep.
there's enough inventory to fulfill it, right? And then if there is inventory, then they have to look at a third system like a ShipStation or something. They have to go
Yep.
fulfill the order from there, print the pics, fill the order from there. Then they have to go into Shopify and mark that order as fulfilled, maybe, right? And then they have to go to an inventory system to mark that inventory as consumed at the end of the day manually, right? And it just becomes so much. They're having like literally three screens up, and there's a frustration in the users' faces. And then here's the funny part: you go in to get into a demo, and you just show them, here's an order from Shopify. I'm the customer. I created it. Oop, it goes right into the ERP system, and there's inventory, and I just went ahead and shipped it. Whoop. It did like 2 or 3 transactions at once. They're like, oh my god, it's like groundbreaking to them, right? But it's understandable that you got to that point because you're growing the business. The business has kind of now, come to a point where that's no longer sustainable.
Hmm.
So when you get to that point, have clear goals. Why does it make sense for us to go into integrate into an ERP system? What are the top 4 or 5 items that we do daily that take up 75% of our day? The 80/20 rule, Peter, right? You're a big proponent of that, and know that, if you could
Live my,
solve.
I live my work
Nope,
life and my home life by it.
that's right. Exactly, right? And then, right, at a certain point, 80/20, all right, am I spending 80% of my day, which could be 20% of my work if it was done in an ERP system at the end of the day. And once you come to that realization, now you can say, okay, well, how do we want to solve these issues that we have currently in our business? And then how is an ERP system going to help me, right? Really
Mhm.
turbocharge, the whole operations.
Yep. All right. Tip number 2, my favorite subject. I don't know. I get kicks out of doing this stuff, but tip number 2, it's all about data cleaning. Clean up your e-commerce site. Oh my God, this is the biggest tip. Surely. The pain if your site is not clean and you bring all
Oh
the
my gosh.
crap into your ERP system.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let's break it down. What particular areas, when we say clean your site, what do we actually mean? What are we looking for when we're talking about,
Yeah, I
the
think
data?
sometimes, yeah, so I think sometimes, right, e-commerce site, like any other database, could get full of junk, right? You have people
Mm,
coming in and out. And nothing was really actually formalized and how you create SKUs or what type of tags are against your customers' items, customers missing addresses, for example, right? People are just adding things on the fly, right, without making any sense of like, well, how do we
Surely
go
not.
ahead and yeah,
Surely not.
I know people shouldn't be, they're not doing that. They're really not doing that, but it's a thing, right? And it's, like I said, like any other database, it's taking a strong look at your data. Because if you have that,
Mhm.
if the data is not that you don't trust already, right, that you
Yep.
having to manipulate after the order comes in,
Yep.
higher chances are that you're going to continue doing the same thing, even no matter how good an
Yeah.
ERP system is.
What do we mean when we say data though? Because I would then say,
Yeah,
well, yeah, it's easy to go data, master data, but specifically, what
yeah,
are we talking?
yeah. Yeah, it's like your SKU numbers, right? Applying logic to that. That makes sense. Maybe by categories of items, making sure you have parent-child relationships properly put together. Like if everything's a SKU, maybe you have an opportunity to create like matrix structures, for example, right? You sell a jacket online, but you sell 5 different variations of that jacket in different sizes and colors and patterns, stuff like that. Well, then maybe look at some additional functionality and create a better user experience by using variants, right? That you would then maybe try to bring into the ERP. Standardizing your taxonomy. This one probably is up to date, more likely than not for most e-commerce
Mm,
companies, but it's the whole navigation. Like, do we have our products under the right subcategories and categories?
yeah.
So when people navigate through, does that make sense, right? Images, unit prices.
Mm,
What about shipping zones? It's really easy to slap a shipping zone because hey, we got this new customer and they were giving them some special shipping. Let's put a new shipping zone in. But should you have really done that, right? Should you have
mm.
maybe instead given that customer a coupon code or a promo code
Your
by
promotional
using an
costs.
existing,
Yeah.
like on that shipping zone? Because now you're managing all these additional zones that
Yeah.
are
Mm,
just stuck in your database. What about payment methods? Just credit card right now, but what about like other credit options? Not just maybe Shopify payment, but maybe there's PayPal, maybe there's Shop Cash, right?
mm-hmm.
There's gift cards, right? Do you want to take some of that, right? And how do you manage that moving forward? So,
Yeah.
a lot of decisions have to go into, well, what does our e-commerce site look like? How do we make sure this data is the way we want to transact? We want our customers to transact that way, so it's not confusing to them before we go and integrate to an ERP
Mm-hmm.
system.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, there's a lot of decision points that go into it.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is setting you up for success because it's so easy to go, oh my God. And it's like, it's not, well, for the vast majority of people, it's not fun to comb through all of this stuff. Make sure you've got an up to date picture for everything. Like, there's a lot of time spent in cleaning up the data. Well, not necessarily just cleaning up the data, but also finding missing data and populating, the data that you might have just thought, it's fine. It's blank.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not not often is blank data ever a good thing in the world of ERP.
Yeah.
And
Right.
data validation as well. Like maybe your e-commerce site is using a decoding type for states or a different way of categorizing geographical locations or this or the way the phone numbers are categorized. Like there's so much to it
Yeah.
that when you bring
Yeah.
that into especially if you're already in an ERP, that you kind of
Hmm.
don't want it to be completely different or in a different naming convention.
Right.
So there's a whole
Right.
load of stuff where you might actually have the data, but it still needs to be checked. Does it align to the good data I've already got in the ERP? Because especially if you're, in a position where you've got an e-commerce site, but you also are already transacting in an ERP. You don't want to kind of clash. You want the two to kind of blend seamlessly in and then let the ERP handle, right, this particular sales order type is a web order. You don't want it to be completely different, and have to manage it differently. The whole idea of this, right, is bringing in the e-commerce site back into that single source of truth. You don't want this kind of completely different thing jammed into the ERP. So it's data cleaning, but it's data validation across all of it. It all needs to be checked.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And understanding, well, you have not only customers, but what if you're also starting to do business on the B2B side? Now you have companies. What do you do with payment terms,
Hmm.
right? How are you
Yeah.
managing credit, extending credit to customers and stuff like that? Like, you got to think of it that way. Like, okay, it's not just what you're doing now, but how are you setting up your e-commerce site for future growth at the end of the day?
Yeah. Yeah.
And what the ERP system that you select be able to support that future growth
Hmm.
for you,
Hmm.
right? Whether you're going to
Yeah.
do, a single site, multiple sites, different omni channels, things like that.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
you want to be very, recognize that early on in this project that that your site might need some, some additional, updates on it before you integrate.
Yep. Tip number 3, and getting onto the geeky side of it, choosing the right connector. There's multiple options here. There's multiple ISVs as well.
Yeah.
There's some native stuff. Like, big tip here, choosing the right way to connect your e-commerce site to your ERP.
Yeah. This is, always the first 2 points are huge. This is like right there. You choose the wrong connector. It doesn't matter how much, work you've done on your e-commerce site or, clean the data, understanding your goals, but the wrong connector could set you back like 10 steps because it could limit your growth. It could limit what you could actually do and have your back office team see, that type of
Hmm.
stuff. So finding the right connectors is really, really important to make sure it's
Hmm.
going to bring the data that you're capturing in Shopify forward into the ERP.
Yeah.
The
Yeah. And,
first one,
and
obviously, yeah,
different types of data, different types of connector, right? If we think
yeah,
about some ways you can pull and push data in batch, or you can pull and push data real time. That's very different.
hmm
I've seen it before with something that's been set up and the company's expecting real time. When an order's placed, I expect to see it within a couple of minutes in my ERP. Then we find out,
hmm
oh no, we batch process it every 24 hours.
yeah,
Like, it
yeah,
runs
right.
at 2 a.m. and then it loads all of your things. Well, that's a day. And we know, we've had these conversations before with the e-commerce world and the way that Amazon is pushing the service of online shopping. People expect it next day. So if you choose a connector that batch processes stuff and it runs during the night, there's a day gone. So you can't really start to offer. If you're used to offering next day service or next day delivery on your e-commerce site, then you've chosen a connector that works on batch processing. That could massively increase the delivery time to your customers without you even
Absolutely.
knowing, from just choosing
Yeah,
the wrong connector.
right, right, exactly. And not all connectors are made equal, folks out there. If anyone thinks that just
And
because there's an
that needs to
e-commerce
be on a
connector out
t-shirt.
there, yeah. That any, it's a Shopify connector. Let's just plug it in, right? Or it's a BigCommerce connector. Let's plug it in. Not all connectors are equal.
All right. So
It's
what
important to
types of
understand.
connectors have we got?
Yeah, we got a lot of different types here. So the first one is native connectors, like from Shopify or BigCommerce or WooCommerce, where they've kind of created their own connector slash open API models in essence, where even their connector operates like in like a mini ERP in the backend that they've kind of developed, right? Like into like
Hmm.
maybe into like a QuickBooks or something like that, right? But there's that option if you're a small enough e-commerce and maybe ERP is too big for you right now, but you want to start streamlining, maybe go down that route and look at some e-commerce connectors that help you keep your data organized for the operations. Then you got some what we call IPaaS middlewares,
Yep.
integration platform as a service, which these are full blown out flows and integration points. So you're not building these API connections manually, but these are kind of what we call like Celigo or a Boomi or other iPasses that are out there. Celigo is probably the biggest one
Mm.
in this
Yeah.
particular space. So, Celigo integrates, you have Shopify to Business Central, you have Amazon to Business Central, right? You have WooCommerce to Acumatica, right? So these are all pre-built kind of flows or connection points that you have, and they're pretty plug and play. Like, you add it, and then like let's say if you want to map some other field in the table, right? Like you have the whole full like access to the
Hmm.
Acumatica database, and you have access to your e-commerce site database and tables, and you could kind of do your own mapping with the fields that you're using there. So that's a pretty
Hmm.
popular one. We've done that for multiple customers using Celigo actually, and their support is phenomenal. I do have to say that. So that's also a good option if you feel like any native connectors aren't going to be a good fit. And then you got the other
Hmm.
side of it, the native connectors by the ERP publisher.
Yeah.
Like Acumatica, for example, has their own Shopify connector. So it connects to your Shopify site, pulls data. There's directional syncs, whether you want to do import or export or bi-directional at the end of the day, and different entities that it connects with. Business Central has their own Shopify sync connector as well. So, they all kind of do the same thing. So, maybe that's one where you start at the ERP side. Say, well, which ERP system is going to be
Yeah.
your growth for the future, and then connect that to your e-commerce site.
Yeah.
And then
I would
the
say
final
go
one
for the
here. Yeah.
native one. Go for the
Yeah.
native where it's available. It's going to be,
Yeah.
well, I hate to say it, but it's probably going to be better supported. It's
Hmm.
probably going to be more of a seamless connection. Uh,
Yeah.
it's within the same thing. Like we've seen this at Summit this year, right? At Acumatica,
Yeah.
they had
Yeah.
they had
Yeah.
Shopify on stage. So we know that these ERP platforms are wanting to build these partnerships with the big e-commerce platforms out there. So native connectivity is probably the most, well, I would say the safest or at least stable. Like,
Yeah.
it's going to
Yeah.
be,
Stable.
once it's kind
Yeah.
of in, yeah. Especially when we're
Yeah.
talking about different connectors, API endpoints. If one shifts, like one company shifts, you're gonna have to
Right.
reassess your mapping. Like if it's a native
Exactly.
one, it's kind of looked after by them.
Exactly. Yeah. And especially with the multi, dual upgrades that happen per year, right?
Yeah,
It just happens naturally. You don't have to worry about doing a whole separate upgrade with the third party ISV. You're
yeah,
dealing with one vendor at the end of the day, one throat to choke, FYI, right? Which especially something so intimate together
yeah,
between your e-commerce and ERP, it's always preferable that you have something that is very native in the product for sure. And then the other side of this, right, going native is a custom built API where
hmm,
there is no native connector from the e-commerce site. There's no middleware available. The publisher doesn't have a connector. Then you custom build it, right? So one we've
yeah,
recently done is we did it in integration from Lyft, which is kind of an ERP system slash order management system, more or less. E-commerce site, really, really specific to the print manufacturing industry. You take orders from there and integrate them into the ERP to do the backend
okay,
manufacturing and fulfillment of that order. And that's where we built all custom built the APIs all out.
hmm,
Everything from master tables to, the sales order header and lines and
yeah,
invoicing and sending shipment information back and tracking number information back and inventory, all totally custom built. Obviously the most expensive option at the
yep,
end of the day, right? And I
yeah,
would say that should be your last approach if you can, literally are so unique that you can't find anything. That would have to be your last approach.
yeah. And there's a huge world out there. As soon as you look at RESTful APIs, it's great that the world is your oyster, but also
Yeah,
that's huge to try and get
that
through
is.
and work out and build out. I think of the developer hours that could be used just doing that.
Yeah, I'm telling you, this one is a lot of hours that we've spent on it to do it.
Mm.
I probably couldn't even tell you the number of hours, but it's a lot of hours that we spent to do it. It's working really well. The client's really happy, but it's been a big mapping exercise. You spend so much time just mapping fields, literally mapping fields, right? Because there could be one Business Central field, and then that could be like 5 fields on the other side that holds that same data on the Lyft ERP side. Like it's crazy. It's crazy. So yeah, choosing the right connector is good. It's probably one of those ones, one of the more important elements to this whole
Hmm.
project is to make sure you have the right
Yep.
connector. That means that you're gonna have the right ERP system.
Yep. Tip number 4. This is just as important. I would say that this is the most important one. I mean, how are you supposed to choose between this? Testing, 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 testing. We know from ERP migrations, one of the most crucial stages is testing, user acceptance testing, and just the technical testing of whether it works. What's your kind of sub tips within the tip of testing?
Yeah, especially when it comes to e-commerce, always have like your customer hat on. Like, how is a
Yeah.
customer going to put in an order, right? What's the customer journey at the end of the day, right? How do you handle exceptions when the customer just does something that you don't expect them to do on the e-commerce site, right? Always keep thinking of that. And because any exceptions or things that you don't take account of are ultimately going to go into the ERP as errors, right? Orders are going to be
Hmm.
stuck, and then you have to manually clean them in the ERP or manually clean them in your e-commerce. That then gets resynced to ERP and could create confusion and delayed orders at the end of the day. So it's really important that, and e-commerce is a very fast moving, fast paced industry. There's zero time for errors, right? 2 day shipping, same day shipping, right? That order has to come in from the e-commerce site straight to picking and shipping almost the same day. So, you need to test that, right? Test the volume of orders. Try to do a stress test. Like if you get 400 orders a day, try to put in 400 orders a day, and how do you process those 400 orders a day in the ERP, right? Because it could potentially slow you down if you just feel like, oh, if you're integrated, we're good to go. But what happens on the back end? How do you logistically get that order from sales order entry to picking, shipping, invoicing?
Hmm.
Uh,
Yep.
timing of order changes. An order
You
comes in,
kind of need
customer
to
pays something.
brainstorm, don't you?
Yeah,
Brainstorm all of the things the customer could do or ask for. So things like canceling an order, trying to change an order, or even if you've
yeah,
got a notes box. What if a customer goes, please ship this together with my other order? Can you see that on the ERP side? Do you actually get to see any kind of free type text that they might have put on something? What
right.
happens if they go to cancel the order on the e-commerce site and it's already in shipping status in your ERP? Because the e-commerce site might go, yep, thank you, Mr. Customer. This order has been cancelled. Does that actually
Exactly.
push anything back to your ERP?
Right, right. Yeah, otherwise you're gonna be
Yeah.
fulfilling an order that the customer didn't expect, right?
Yeah. And the e-commerce
For
site could
free.
have already handled, yeah, and that's already, the e-commerce site could have already sent that email out saying, thank you, confirmation of cancellation. Might have already triggered the payment, the refund back, but your warehouse team still see an active order and
Yeah.
ship it.
Yeah,
And then
exactly
your
right.
ERP tries to invoice it, and then it doesn't match against cancelled order on the e-commerce site. It's like,
God,
oh my
yeah.
God.
Accounting, I'm getting a headache already.
This is your world. It's not even my world.
Talking about credit memos, the first thing I started thinking was clearing accounts. I'm like, oh my God, oh my God. Or returns, clearing accounts. But yeah, no, you're right.
It's
You're
one of
right,
those
Peter.
things.
Exactly.
If someone's going to find something that doesn't work, it's not going to be your team. It's going to be the
Yeah.
customer.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. So, test it with real life scenarios as much as possible. Yeah, it's almost like an ERP pilot test, but for your e-commerce.
Yeah.
Document at the end of the day. Even though may seem like it's just an ERP project, this is very much so as well an e-commerce project.
Yeah.
If
Well,
you're
this is two
when you're doing ERP
systems.
implementation. Yeah,
You're
exactly.
testing two systems now. You're testing your e-commerce site and your ERP. Do the two work together?
Yeah,
If you're doing an ERP implementation, you're just testing the ERP. Does the order processing work in the ERP? Does the shipping
right,
work in the ERP?
right.
Does the AR work in the
Exactly.
ERP? With this
Exactly.
is, does the order processing still work in the e-commerce site? Does that then also work in the ERP? You kind of got double testing. Once it's
Yeah.
set, it won't feel
You're
like you're
good.
managing two
Yeah.
systems, but you
Right.
do need to test
Exactly.
both sides of it.
Exactly. Exactly. Like, how do you handle sales tax, right? What if the customer, is ordering from a place that, we just got Nexus? Well, is that going to come over correctly, right? All
Hmm.
that type of stuff. So yeah,
Yep.
test, keep the customer hat on as much as you can when you're going through this journey.
Imagine if you've got an e-commerce site where a particular product line is dropshipped.
Hmm.
Does that
Yep.
order come into your ERP as a dropship? Does that still work? Okay. Technical hat off, people hat back on.
People have back
Tip
on.
number 5 is people management. This is a
Yeah.
change management topic for this tip. So there's a few things here, which we already know. UAT is probably linked to training of end users, but I would say it's kind of like tip 1, where we said we've got the clear goals of the ERP integration. We should also have clear goals of our team. Who's now going to be responsible for, you know, managing exceptions or looking for or fault finding or resolving any issues, any extra training that might need to happen. So
Yeah.
how would we break this down? So tip number 5, we just got focus on change management. But what do we actually need to
Yeah.
do when we talk about focusing on this?
Yeah, it's just constantly thinking about, well, what you've put together, what you've implemented, right? E-commerce to ERP, that's like the phase one to get it going at the end of the day. Now, what is phase two? Like, how could you now continue to bring more value to your customer on the e-commerce side, which is going to streamline your orders and make it for faster delivery on the ERP side, right?
Yeah.
Is understanding that it's not like a set it and forget it type of thing. Because you have this thriving, successful e-commerce business. Now it's time to really kind of get this plane really up in the air, right? And get into cruising altitude and, faster to your customer. So who's going to support the integration? Number one. Number two is, as you need more functionality, the publisher, whichever connector that you got, is going to be able to support it, right? And obviously that comes up also in one of our previous steps that we talked about points is to make sure you get the right connector, but updating
Hmm.
the functionality, right? Don't stay kind of stagnant, what I would say, and think of this as, customer. This is really going to set you apart if you do your back-end operations really, really well to get more sales from your customer. So keep
Yep.
focusing on that.
Yep. Yep. Very good. Top 5 tips. We probably could have done with 10. Like we could have easily have
I
done
know.
10.
Yeah,
But if
for sure.
there's 5, these are big hitters. All 5 of these are massive, big things to consider. I think that is it, because otherwise we'll just keep going. But
Yeah.
these were definitely the top 5. So set clear goals for what you actually want the integration to achieve. Clean up your e-commerce data so you're not importing crap.
Hmm.
Choose the right connector, test real customer journeys, including all of the weird, wonderful things, how returns, order changes, cancellations, etc. And don't forget the people side, as we said. Train your
Yeah.
teams.
Yeah.
So really the integration sticks, right? Because you
Yeah.
want this
Yeah.
for the long term. And Nirav, I think you got one more pro tip as you go live. So you
I
can
do.
sneak in a 6th. I'll let you sneak in a
Yeah, yeah, a
6th.
sneak in a sixth, exactly. Yeah, this is good. A customer actually did this recently, and I thought this was brilliant, right? For a regular ERP implementation, we always tell our customers, hey, just let your customers or vendors know that you're kind of going through this software upgrade, and that if there's an issue, right, with the shipment or something, that they kind of have a little bit more patience with you guys at the end of the
Hmm.
day. So a customer of ours just says that they got live on a Shopify to Acumatica integration. And right there on
Hmm.
their Shopify site, they had a banner they put up right there at Go Live saying something along the lines of that they started and moved to a new accounting inventory system. They don't expect orders to be delayed, but in case there is an issue or a delay, please bear with them. I thought that was brilliant. At the end of the day,
Yeah.
I think that shows a couple things that if I'm a customer, like they're investing in their future, they're investing, this is
Yeah.
where I'm buying this from. They're investing in their infrastructure, right? I think that's
Yep.
awesome. Number two, it is resolving any frustration up front, right? Something that were to happen that first week and they can't get an order out like that day or something like that customer's already knows. Like it just
Hmm.
reduces the stress level. So, that is your platform to your customers. And I think it makes a lot of sense where you also advise them or give
Yeah.
them insight into what you're doing in your business, so they understand and are
Yep.
patient with you. I thought that was huge.
Yeah. Yeah, we did that for the UK. The UK site, we made sure the customer service team or anyone that was emailing out, like purchasing team to vendors, we got hold of course, it was easy because we were doing master data cleanup at the time.
Yeah.
We said, right,
Yeah.
let's just do a mail shot to all of our customers and go, guys, as of 1st of July, we are changing onto a new ERP system. We did it for a few things. One, to help with people being a little bit more flexible and accommodating and
Yeah.
patient with that changeover, just in case anything went wrong. But also we said, documents will change. We know the world of cybersecurity is always kind of, the fight between scammers and hackers versus legit people. It's always that tug of war, right? So we kind of said, look, when we change, documents will change. So we gave them an example of what our invoice will now look like, what our order confirmation will look like. So they knew that it wasn't going to be a scam. Because if I suddenly get
Right.
a document that looks different, it's
Yep.
from probably a different email address. The PDF looks completely different to what I'm used to for the last decade of receiving invoices from that company. I might flag it for spam and not pay it. So it's one, protecting us from an AR standpoint, but also
Exactly.
from them, so they understand what we're doing and why we're doing it. Because at the end of the
Yeah.
day, it's an improvement. When we say technology, yes, there's going to be improvements for you in terms of there might be cost savings or more streamlined processes, et cetera, growth opportunities, but also for the customer, right? They do get a benefit of it and might be able to fulfill orders better. You might have more capacity, so your lead times might be reduced or something if your flow through is much faster. Yeah, I think this is a huge tip and it's a great for number 6.
Yeah.
Almost could have got in there in number 5, but letting your customers know ahead of time
Yeah.
that this is happening.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Pro tip. Pro tip.
Pro tip. And that one's for free, along with the other
That was for
5. We
free.
haven't charged for any of them.
Correct.
Just as we do at ABCs of ERP and beyond. So if you're just finding us for the first time, this podcast goes out we record every single week. We publish every 2 weeks. on every major podcast platform as well as YouTube, and we do it completely for free. It's a bit of fun. We're spreading the message of the stuff that we love talking about and what we do day to day. So if you've just stumbled across us, make sure you like us, subscribe, tell your friends, push it on LinkedIn, all those cool stuff. So with that being said, Nirav, thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Enjoy the next 2 weeks, and I will catch you on
Absolutely.
the next episode.
You got it, sir.